been.
Yeah. Holy shit.
There it is.
This art is just so freaking crazy and just like so, like this is the epitome of like underground comics to me. I think I love it. I think it is so cool. I don't know, just the
Do not wear that outfit again. But if you want to keep your speed, because I want to fit in. Sorry, you're just not terribly important to me. Did you know that Whitney Houston's debut have 4 #1 singles on? Did you know that, Christy? There are no girls with good personalities. I don't think we should see each other anymore. It never was supposed to be. Gotta return some videotape. Have to return some videotape. Did you know I'm utterly insane? I like to dissect girls that ate some of their brains. Gotta return some videotape. I'm really late. Gotta return some.
Okay. All right, and we're live. We should be. Let me make sure.
All right, we're live.
Yep. Just wanted to make sure I had the audio right on the stream. I had that the last time, and as we saw with the echo too. Well, anyways, this is Thick Thoughts. I'm with Dr. Ben, and I've got Joshua Young here today. He's well, how would you introduce yourself as a playwright or a writer?
Playwright, always and forever. Playwright is my first. I'm a playwright. That is, I will go to my deathbed. That will be my identity. So playwright for sure.
Excellent. All right, and I did have to add, with your handle on Twitter and Instagram and is Totoro versus Batman. So I did want to ask, who do you think would win between them in the fight, Totoro versus Batman? Which one?
Well, I think. I mean, so I came upon that handle because I feel like it's my two conflicted. Like, I feel like it's less of I feel like those are the two sort of spirit animals within me that constantly rage. The battle that rages within me is Totoro versus Batman. So it's that's how I stumbled upon that handle, was that I feel like it's a good description of my temperament. As for who would win in a fight, so technically Batman can win when people ask me who would win in a fight, Batman versus etc., I said the question should never be who would win in a fight. The question would be, how would Batman win in the fight? That said, I think that holistically, Totoro would win because he would finally help ease the pain in Batman's broken heart from the trauma he carries from the death of his parents. So technically, Batman would win any actual sort of rock'em sock'em robots fight, but Totoro would win. Totoro would win the emotions.
Right. Well, I felt he was more of a well, I guess, would you describe Totoro as almost kind of like a spirit? Is that how you would describe it? Because like I think of him as being like he's the big thing, and then there's all the little versions of that, and then it's like they can make like trees and stuff grow, and I almost thought that cat bus thing was a part of him too. So that's, what I mean? Like I think of it as like all of that is like part of the same.
I forget. I remember weirdly enough. So I love anime, and my sort of entree into the anime world was as a kid. But then in college, I actually really got into studying anime as it relates to Japanese culture. And so certainly Totoro he's definitely a spirit of the forest, and so he's definitely a spirit. And then his relationship, I don't have it fresh in my memory about his relationship to the Japanese culture sort of more deeply than that. But I definitely know that his, the pulls on that sort of mythos and deep cultural history. And then, especially as it relates to like the reason why I love My Neighbor Totoro is that, like, other than the fact that the mother is sick, like the mother doesn't, like, there's no real, it's a great example of a film where there's no real conflict. And I'm a big fan of the hero's journey, and I'm a big fan of conflict, but it's like just real, it's just wholesome. And Totoro is a spirit who's also its purpose is really just comforting these sort of like kids whose mother is sick. Like, it's really sort of, that's it. And I'm like, I'm down for that. I'm just so down for like this sort of magical furry, monster whose sole purpose is to sort of bring these kids joy as they're dealing with something that's very realistic.
Right. I do have to shout out Sam Haffey is watching, who is often my co-host. We refer to him as Sam, the river. And
well, hello, Sam.
he's always he's always fun. That's what I'm saying. He's on the intro form I play it asks, is he a man that dreamt he was a river, or a river that dreamt he was a man?
and Sam is Sam's hanging out, or is just popping in?
I think he's just in the chat, just watching in the chat.
Right,
so he can just he can. So that's what. Does that show up on your side if I show?
I just saw it. Yep.
Okay, yeah. So that's him. He's. Well, let me show up. Let me pull up. How do I do this here? I gotta go. I'll go over to this. There we go.
Yeah, Sam just mentioned we are mourning the main man, Bob the Goon. We all are. That's certainly, who does mourn for who mourns for the Bob the Goons of the world.
How do I get? Sorry about that. It's like.
What's that?
Yeah, I've got to do.
I hear like a bird. I hear like a bird chirping in the back. If that's where you're at, if you have birds, that's my father's a big bird guy. He's got pet birds.
There is I live like, there's like a little like pond out back. They have a whole there we go. Okay, that's what I was trying to do.
It's so beautiful to see. So the show. Well, the first incarnation of the show is so old.
Yes,
I look like a different man.
So why don't you tell us about? I'll play a little bit of this, but why don't you tell us about where this comes from? Who mourns for Bob the Goon? Like that's why we're here. What can you tell us about your play?
Well, and I'm glad because the play had a limited run in, I think it was 2016, and at the Here Art Center in New York, and it, now that it's many years later, and it was my first sort of like big show, and I've always wanted to. Well, the past couple of years, I was thinking about the premise and the point I wanted to make with it. But it's both initially and what will always be true is that the play is the play was originally about a therapy group for individuals who all thought they were third-tier comic book characters.
Right.
And the idea, and so the big inciting incident was that the play was disrupted, or the therapy group was disrupted when someone arrived who believed they were from an anime, not from the comic. And the show starts off with the protagonist being a person who believed he was Bob the Goon, and then he actually dies about midway through the play, and then we follow the character. We follow the character who came into the play, who believes she's Asuka from Neon Genesis Evangelion. And
okay, so that's why.
So it becomes. she's the stealth protagonist. The main character sort of dies, and the part of the gist of the play that I'm still interested in exploring. So in the original incarnation, it turns out that the therapist, which this part I'm still going to keep, the therapist was a failed act. So it turns out the therapist was a failed actor who was basically treating a bunch of vets with PTSD with a untested form of drama therapy. And which I still kind of like this as the crux, because I think therapy, we live in an age where people who are really, there's a term for it, but people who are not qualified to do certain things are just saying that they're this thing and doing it. And so I've always, and while I think drama therapy could be very helpful, I definitely, when I was in New York, before I left, seeing a lot of, I knew theater kids who were like, I'm now doing drama therapy. And I'm like, if I was suffering from trauma, you were like the last, like this crazy actor is like the last person I would want holding my hand to recover, like psychological recovery.
Let's try and reenact your trauma together.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. So, so that was the play. And that was, so it was, and the idea was the sort of premise of it was this idea of clinging on to the idea of being a tertiary person in the world, but yet still experiencing profound tragedy, and then who cares? I mean, the premise really is built into the title, Who Mourns for Bob the Goon? It's like, if you think of 89 Batman, which I love to death, you have this guy, like we owe a lot of this to just Jack Nicholson and oh goodness gracious, of all this,
Tracy Walters,
who were both profoundly talented actors. I'm sure it was not in the script, this idea that these two, the nuances about their relationship, which are really specific, and there's that really beautiful scene where Eckhart, it's early on in the play or movie, and Eckhart sort of insults Jack, and Jack pushes him back, and he pulls the gun on him, and then out of nowhere, Bob is there to defend Jack, and he's a very loyal guy, and a guy who was just killed on a whim, and his life is over. And I'm just fascinated by how that relates to where we are in America, coming to terms with the idea that we all want to be the protagonist in our own stories, but sometimes it feels like we're not.
Right. Wow. Well, yeah, see that definitely, that's what I mean, is like just the whole, like, because I remember like when I like first seeing that, right? First seeing the Batman movie, and like how much that scene stuck out, right? Which like I clipped it in here just for the viewers at home. Like that's what I'm saying. We can play all this. Come on.
Bob, gun. Going to need a minute or two alone, boys. Bob, gun.
I got it taken off of loop is what I have to do too. Sorry about that. But yeah, so like that, seeing that the first time seeing that, like every time I've watched it since, because I had it's odd too, because I had a girlfriend that like wrote her thesis about the Batman movie, and like I never think about that, but she watched the movie like every day for her last year or whatever. So
I mean, I believe. I mean, it's a big deal minute. But I mean, I just said minute because I saw Sam's. It's a big deal movie, and I could see how someone could write it. I think that's how I got into college. I wrote a paper about 89 Batman. Was how I got into college.
I mean, so Sam like just knows like every line too. Gonna need a minute or two alone, boys.
The guy that ended up playing Bob in the Here Arts production was a good friend of mine named Alex Tichy, he and I had been he's like a astrophysicist now. He's no longer an actor, but he and I had been roommates for many years in New York, and he could we could start Batman at the beginning and he could easily quote. I mean, he has one of those sort of like memories. He could quote the whole thing verbatim.
Dude, that just comes over on here.
It's very quotable. The movie is very quotable, I should say, as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's just that's what I was like. How do I? Yeah, I put all these. Oh Jesus. That's what I'm saying. It was like that moment is just it's after, moment after moment, all these parts that stick out. I mean, like him on the roof. I mean, that whole beginning, who are you? It's just.
I mean, if we're just talking 89 Batman, I like to. So there's so much debate about who is the best Batman, what is the best Batman movie to date, including every iteration made. If the first 2/3 of Batman 89 is the best and most accurate Batman movie made to date, it changed and there's reasons for it. If you get into the history and you get into the Sam Hamm script, there's changes that started like as soon as Vicky Vale enters the Batcave, qualities of the film change. I still love it, but it's not the qualities change that I think remove it from being the perfect Batman movie. But prior to that, Batman doesn't kill. I think the best example to date of Batman being a detective. I mean, I think the recent movie, The Batman, is very overrated. And it was billed as sort of like Batman as detective, but he is actually not that bright in that movie. But Batman in 89 actually is ahead of the Joker, solves the Joker's, scheme ahead of time. His fighting style is clearly like one of the things I love about 89 Batman is that instead of having a prolonged, training sequence of Batman visiting all these different countries, learn all these different fighting styles, we have Vicky Vale and Knox entering into a hallway where you just see the different armors of different countries where, so a smart audience member is like, oh, he would have gone to that country and he would have trained in that style of fighting and brought back this armor with him. Like that kind of brilliant filmmaking is what I think that kind of nuance is really what makes something special. And it's, again, one of the reasons why first 2/3 of 89 Batman, perfect.
Right. And, the thing that I like about it too, now that like, thinking about it like that is that like he really like made like the role of like Bruce Wayne like his own, you know what I mean, because it went from like, think of like Bruce Wayne in like the Adam West show, right? Just kind of like disregard all like the the over the top like campness of it and like look at his like Bruce Wayne character was like a classic like movie hero, like when Keaton comes along, he brings that like, just that sort of like, like jokester, the sort of, I don't want to say like unpredictable, but like that's a certain like spontaneity and like goofiness instead of
and he's very aloof. Like, yeah, the thing that Keaton's Bruce Wayne is, which I like. I mean, I think that I like a lot of the character. Like every actor, I think has had really beautiful moments where they, I think, capture the differentiation between Bruce Wayne and Batman. Keaton is good for me because he's spontaneous. Like, the let's get. I like to talk about the let's get nuts moment because it's actually, again, it's actually pretty. It's pretty shrewd if you think about it. Because he's trying to engineer getting shot in a way where he'll get shot in the chest. Like it's one of those things where people I don't think have ever, like, he's doing a thing on purpose. Like it seems like it's like, I think it was Kevin Smith who once made the joke where, like that's the day Michael Keaton went in and he's like, I'm acting opposite Jack Nicholson. I'm just going to go for it. But I don't think that, I think it's actually a pretty smart choice because he's trying to engineer this moment. So Keaton's Bruce Wayne is it's Batman. Like if Bruce Wayne's really Batman, you see Bruce Wayne as Batman even without the mask, but you also see his goofy public persona, especially when you see him at the ball, when he's sort of like just doesn't know what's going on and he puts he's just sort of aloof.
Right.
And I think that's a real, and I think even the play, because especially back then they had to play up, the love story angle. So the Vicky Vale romance, I think, is twofold, where I think that it's certainly showing him as Playboy, but then I think he actually does fall for Vicky Vale.
Right. Yeah, it's what. Yeah, no, I mean that's what I'm saying. I mean, he captured it, because I mean, think about too, like his, like Sam mentions too, when he says, you know, you want to get nuts, like, oh, and he gets,
Oh yeah, and
let's
everything
get
Sam
nuts.
just said about
Right.
the dinner with Vicky is, yeah, it's great. It's absolutely great.
Yeah, I don't know. Will that that'll like take up the whole? Oh, I guess it will. Oh, okay. I see how that works now. Yeah, I haven't. This is the first time I've really been doing like comments a bunch. Well, no, we had some before. You know, it's been doing it for a year. It's getting there.
And we of course we saw that same kitchen in the Flash movie, which is a whole other story.
For some reason, yeah, I can't. It's like I can't read it from the phone. Wait, no, okay. I always like the moment when Bruce is having dinner with Vicky. He says some of this stuff is very much for me, and some of it isn't. Just look at his eyes. I really like. Well, I mean, I suppose. I like.
Yeah.
But you know, like you can imagine like the goofy like nerd, you know, like that even stays in character for him, being like, not to necessarily like throw people off completely that he's Batman, but you could imagine like the, you know, like the goofy rich nerd guy, like when he's finally threatened and he's got his girlfriend, he's all of a sudden he's waving around a pitch for the fire poker, and you know, like that's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, but like I said, but that moment, that's my thing. I don't think that moment. I think.
Yeah, I don't think that was accidental. I think that was him. Like
right.
That was what he was. Yeah.
He wanted to get shot, obviously, because he had already planned. Like it's like he's engineering that moment so that he knows, which I think is smart. Like I think he's caught. Joker. Nobody knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman. He's caught in this moment, and so he knows they're going. I mean, he probably knows that his likelihood of living is small. So, you know, try to exercise.
Him saying to Vicky, then that's when he's like, I've got to tell you something. I'm not like other people. And she's like, you're married. He's like, no, listen. It's and that's I forgot about that, because he never says it. It's like he's mouthing the words, and she's like, let me get the door. I forgot about.
She doesn't find out he's Batman until Alfred lets her into the Batcave.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, so this is what I'm saying. Like, I don't think that's just like him going in and trying to act like. I mean, he was going in to act crazy, but I mean, that's what he was going to do. Like, you know, he's like, I'm an actor.
I mean, that's how I've always read it, for sure.
All right. Well, you know, so I mean, that does. Yeah. Let's show. I'm going to start this. I think I can pause it while I think we can talk over it, I believe.
Who Mourns for Bob the Goon is a new play written by Joshua.
But I want to like just.
Who Mourns for Bob the Goon is.
Oh goodness, I look so different. My goodness.
He's the obscure Batman villain Bob the Goon.
Who Mourns for Bob the Goon is a play about.
That was the director.
Okay.
Bob.
Gun.
It's mostly this was sort of you know, before the show came out to get
This
a little bit of a, you know,
everyone else also
promotional material out.
That they are third-tier comic book characters.
Third-tier superheroes. And
who was
not Batman, not Superman.
You can, if you scroll, you might be able to scroll and see somewhere, and if not, there may now that some of the puppetry we did was really exciting. I don't know if it's in this video, but I'll actually look.
I'm not sure if I brought that.
For as much as I love talking heads, and our actors were all excellent.
Okay, that's what I was wanting to see. He was the Spectre. Okay, and then I wanted to see.
He was an excellent at it. Yeah, Philip's a very talented actor and playwright.
Oh wait, that's him in.
I mean, everybody. That's the other thing too. I got really lucky with the cast of that play. a lot of folks were friends, but I, you know, I mean, especially at that time, a lot of my friends, you know, were, you know, like I said, Philip was a Yaley and a very talented actor and writer. The woman who played, here's a funny story. The woman who played one of the smaller characters in the show, I mean, small, it's an ensemble, so there's no, like not the protagonist, was actually the model for Spider-Woman, for the Alex May, I forget if his name is pronounced Alex Maylev or Alex Maylev, the Brian Michael Bendis run of Spider-Woman in the early 2000s. The woman who modeled for the Alex's style of writing was in the show, which was exciting.
I see. All right. Yeah. So this is.
Oh, and a lot of that. So that's interesting. That's
and also I had to ask about the Mr. Gong character. Were you like a fan of the Max too? Is that this guy on the right here? Oops.
No. So this is you're seeing a lot of inside baseball. So these stills are from a workshop production of the play that happened before we made it to full inside baseball of theater. The actors here are the exception of Philip on the far left. They are in an earlier incarnation, which was not the final production.
Okay.
The gentleman on the far right, who is actually a friend of mine and a very talented actor, but his name is Mike Fuchs. He did not play Bob in the final production, and as the woman in the back also did not play make it in the final production. She was not one of the actors. So in theater, there's a lot of changing parts, especially for lower budget, downtown theater. But they're all very talented people and were perfect. But it was definitely for the shoestring budget and us getting this little play up. And if I could go back in time and apply what I know now back then, I think it would have, there's so many things, there's so much one learns doing theater. But it definitely,
oh geez. Uh-oh.
But we should try to find one of the pictures of the puppetry. I got to show off that puppetry.
Oh yeah. I can do that easy enough here. That is, yeah, I don't know. Could you hear me?
I'm going on my YouTube page to see if in my videos, if I can easily find. I haven't updated. Similar to my website, I have not updated my playlist or anything else in forever.
Here we go. This is.
Yeah, Who Mourns for Bob the Goon? The one. I mean, I'll send you the link right now. See if I can pull up this guy and post it in the.
Okay, so is that? So that's what you're saying with the puppetry, I believe. Like that's.
Yeah, that's some of the. That's exactly right. That's
okay.
That's and James Ortiz did the puppetry, so I always want to credit people and bring up the
oh yeah.
That's and then there's a nightmare scene where the actor who thinks he's Bob the Goon has a vision of a nightmare version of the Joker, and that is what that looked like.
Let's see. And this is where I was. Hold on, let me go back. So this is the nightmare version of the Joker. You're saying it's like the dream from Bob, or the guy who believed. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so it's not. So, and the idea, I mean, and not listen. One of the things I've learned doing theater is sort of like write your story, and if you do something that starts encroaching upon copyright, like Warner Brothers, like if they really want to that bad, they could have sent me a cease and desist. But that in terms of what is an actual copywritten character. But that said, it's not. It was never, from my point of view as a writer, meant to be like the real Joker. It's meant to be this version of this guy's own sort of demons haunting him that just sort of vaguely resembles a hybrid of the 89 Batman Joker and the comics Joker.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, because it's the characters. you know, I mean, they've gone so far into, you know, just the public, would that be like the public psyche or something or other? You know, it's
Yeah.
people have dreams about, I remember having dreams about, Incredible Hulk, like when I was a kid, you know what I mean? Like, so kids now, I mean, it's even more so because I mean, back then it would have just been a
Yeah,
TV
I
show
actually
or something, you know?
yeah, it's actually almost a shame how oversaturated. I mean, I feel like like I know this will tie into Mr. Gone in a second, but I feel it's actually we're at a weird cultural moment in terms of what you could describe as an intellectual property or quote unquote content. And I think it's actually a shame in some ways. In some ways it's not, but the oversaturation of comic book material into the mainstream, which I think the effect of it is that it's become a lot of sameness and a lot of the same characters. And I mean, like there's the differentiation that I think made comics so special, has been sort of watered down as it has entered the Disneyfication of it all. And
Exactly.
I mean, the Hulk is a great example. I mean, but like Mr. Gone, I was a big fan. I think the Max comic and cartoons slash animation, I should say, is using the
Oh
adult term
yeah.
from the 90s, is an incredibly sophisticated look at childhood abuse and sexual abuse. And I think it's still underrated to this day. One of the characters does think he's Mr. Gone because one of the characters in the play, the way I'd written it, and I don't know if I would care. Like I think because I tried to marry every character to sort of a vet thing. Like the thing that I mean, I'll get to what I've learned about redoing the play, but
Yeah.
the character was wrestling with not stopping like a sexual assault in the military, like being enabling, or like his wrestling with what he viewed as his degree of guilt in sexual assault in the military, which of course is a very prevalent thing. And
Right.
that aligned, in my opinion, with Mr. Gone is much more of an outright rapist, but the character in the play, when someone is overwrought with guilt, like I think that was where they went in their sort of mind, regardless of actually how guilty they were.
Right. Survivor's guilt. Yeah, no, I'm pretty, yeah. Huh. That makes me,
Yeah.
it really makes me wonder. I can't remember in the show of the Max, like how, because it only covered like the first, like what, 5 or 6 issues of the comic. So it didn't really get, you know, everything was still like kind of,
If
not
I
as like
recall,
defined.
I definitely feel like they got. I mean, the animation was exquisite. I mean, I was such a big fan because that was the era. I don't know how I'm going to date myself. So I'm 42. So I remember staying up and watching. I forget what it's called, MTV's Oddities,
Yeah.
and that was when the Max came on. And if I recall, it was a very accurate. What I feel like they didn't get into was more of the nature, like Julie's history and Julie's relationship to like her own trauma. But I feel like establishing Mr. Gone as sort of, sadly, I mean, to sort of put it bluntly, rapist. I think they did
Yeah.
a pretty good job. I mean,
Yeah,
they
he
didn't
was
run away. They didn't run
definitely.
away from that, if I recall. That was an era where people seem to have give less of a shit about people. You know, they just were like, we're gonna go for it. So to their credit,
Right.
but I do
Yeah,
think
no,
that
it was
before they wrapped it
definitely
up,
more, yeah.
the idea that Max was, because I think Max was a guy that she hit with her car, like and like he had died or was dying. I feel like they obviously don't. I don't know if they got to all that stuff, but I feel like they got to the
Now that
meat of it.
now that you mention it, like it might not have like gone to like explaining that, but like I remember them like it had the part where they were all asking him like what it was, and he's like, it was a Buick. Like
There you
I
go.
never even thought about that before, that it's like he was a bum that got hit by a car, and that's what has like, huh. And here I've been, yeah,
It's brilliant.
reading
Max, I
Nathaniel.
still, I still can't get. I mean, well ahead of its time in terms of its brilliance.
Definitely. I mean, that's what I mean, is like it was, ugh. Yeah, I mean, I mean, beyond, like, I always have, like, I've got a copy of, like, the second Max comic, you know, like, I always got, like, just the the comics by me, and like, just the art alone is just so bonkers. But then you add in that it's like, it's William Mesner Loeb's helping with the words or whatever, and I'll give you a fruit pie. What? But yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Is like, I can't remember like in the show like how far that I know, because I remember they having like the scenes of like Julie when she's in the shadows and she's like brushing the doll and like talking or something and like going over stuff, and I think it has the part with her being kidnapped by Mr. Gone.
They definitely have that for sure. Yeah, and the fact like the black-haired like teenager, or I can't remember, they definitely especially one of the, it's one of those things where they did a really great almost one-to-one adaptation of the comics, and I just think maybe they had to wrap it up quickly because it got canceled or whatever.
Yeah, because I never heard anything else about. There was like the first season or whatever you would call that, and then and I don't remember having more for any of the other shows either. Like I think it was just they did like one season, and then
I think Oddities didn't find its audience,
because
I think it would have
also
found
had Dog Boy, which was by Charles Burns, who did just a million. What else was on there? The Head.
I remember The Head. Maybe Eon Flux started as an Oddities. I can't remember.
That sounds. I think it sounds about right. That and
but then Eon Flux did go on to more success. It was just kind of the age before people. I mean, in the States, adult animation. It took a while for it to become even. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where I have to catch myself because I don't think it's entirely true. I just think it's about the type of, because I would call The Simpsons to a degree adult animation, but it's still comedy. I would say sort of non-comedy. All the other genres of adult animation took a while to catch on in the States, and I still think, and it's still something we wrestle with. We're just it's culturally we're on a different evolutionary timeline than Japan, where manga and animation and anime just evolved in a way where there was not the same juvenile attachment. Liquid Television. There we go. That sounds right. Thanks. That's someone in the comments, and Kevin Strange. We were trying to place if it was Oddities. It was Liquid Television.
Yeah. Oh, okay, right.
That's why I was like, maybe. Yeah. I wasn't that sure, but the Max and the Head were definitely Oddities.
Yeah, I always try to aim. I stay like non-committal about everything. I'm always like, oh, maybe.
that's what. Like, well, that's the famous Carl say. There's a whenever you say when I say well maybe it's both non-commitment. One of the greatest, but like. Low key. It can be used as a great slur, for lack of a better way of putting it. I don't know if you ever watched Cosmos, but the Cosmos with hosted by Carl Sagan. We're talking late 70s, early 80s, maybe early 80s. It's brilliant. It's and the book's brilliant, and everyone should read Carl Sagan. But there's an episode where Carl Sagan, who had done a lot of work discovering and sort of mapping out Mars, they had found some sort of they were this trying to figure out what some of the markings were on Mars, and my language is a little bit I'm a little bit rusty because I'm not obviously in the scientific field, but they couldn't figure out if it was sort of like these new discoveries were from like meteors hitting or some other occurrence. And this guy was really at NASA was really cocksure that he was like, it's this. And Sagan didn't fight him on it. So this guy was very committed to it. And Sagan just said, well, maybe. But the way he said it was just kind of like, it's not that. And you'll find out it's not that. But I'm going to just, right. I'm going to let you have this moment thinking that it's, this crater is, whatever you think this crater is, did I know that it's not? And he just said, well, maybe.
Maybe.
So if you're ever in a fight with someone, I've done this a few times. It actually does make people mad. If someone is like really sure of something, but you know you're right, just answering with, well, maybe.
Maybe. I like that. That's a good one. Yeah, let me show you the other, because I wanted to find out what this was too. That's what I was saying. Like, I wanted to, like you said, Joker, and it took a minute for me to process for the other one, and it was like,
Well, this-
no, what? But I wanted to know what the heck this is too. Like,
yeah, and I would be curious. I mean, I think I would still use all these dreamscapes in the new draft that I'm working on. But this all came. So the idea was that the play took place in reality and then took place in these sort of dreamscapes that these characters were living. That was all part of this drama therapy, and so all of the people in the therapy group, at the behest of the therapist, who turns out to be kind of a wacko, they all are thinking that they're comic book characters. Turns out the therapist is really obsessed with the Wizard of Oz, and his sort of fantasy is sort of as the Scarecrow, a version of the Scarecrow in a sort of post-apocalyptic, semi-fascist wasteland Wizard of Oz. So there's so then that same, and then later having these realities bleed into one another. And so this is a scene from the therapist is trying to give therapy to Bob, but is sort of the narcissism in him takes over, and he starts getting absorbed. Bob starts getting pulled into this guy's own sort of megalomaniacal world, where he is this version of the Scarecrow in the Wizard of Oz. Yeah,
I see. But with like a steampunk villain kind of twist or something.
Yeah, and that's sort of because that's sort of the steampunk villainy. Like that's a fascist post-apocalyptic 10-man.
Excellent.
That right there.
Excellent.
That's
yeah, I see. He's got the heart on it too. I didn't notice that before. I see.
So that's the 10-man there. Dark 10-man.
I see. Does he have a body or something in his hand too? I can't quite tell what that is, but
it is a man in a suit, and then I think he's pulling off stage. He had just killed a flying gorilla, gorilla flying monkey who's like a part of a guerrilla faction fight, like the fighting like an insurgent, like they're fighting, like, so he's pulling off the dead carcass of one of the renegade monkeys.
I see. Excellent. So now did you get to be involved with like seeing like them making all the props and the costumes and everything?
Yeah. So for that show, so especially for that show, it had, again, inside baseball. It had that's one of the flying monkeys, the sort of the gorilla, like you see the machine gun, that's again one of those puppets. That's a great question. So when that show originated, it had originally had a producer from an up and coming production company attached, but then we parted ways. But then I got financial backing, which was really significant. And I, at the same time, did have my own theater company, which I ostensibly have still maintained, called the Playwriting Collective. And so I essentially ended up then so I basically produced it at the time with my theater company, and then stayed on board as a producer and designer. So I did, like, for example, I did the projection design. On top of writing, I did the projection designs. The lighting was done by someone else. A lot of the other design was done by other folks, especially the puppetry, which is really exquisite, which was James Ortiz. But the projection design was me, and then, like I said, I sort of acted as producer, putting all the pieces together. It was actually one of the most exhausting. That's when I learned I never wanted to do that again. I'm glad I did. And I think that I might stage smaller works, just as they create lives of their own. But luckily after that, my career took off a little bit. Like I never had to be in a position where, even though I love theater deeply, I am, no matter all the other things that I love to write, and I am a writer, but I'm a writer after I'm a playwright first. And so it's just, so I can't, so there are, especially down here in North Carolina, I do want to put up theater. I want to get involved more in theater, and I actually think I will. But in terms of the full on, like, that's with the final production that went to here was basically a fully produced equity show. We had a star, the wonderful Lacey Goranson, who I would consider her a friend at this point. Of course, she's on the Connors now, and she was on the Roseanne growing up and did an excellent, home run. So the show ended up being sort of a big production. And it was when I learned the hard way. Like, I think that it's really useful to self-produce if you're an up-and-comer, and I think it's useful to keep making art. I think it's not useful I really overcommitted and sort of overdid myself, and I regret it in retrospect.
Well, because I mean, like, with that's my question too. Like, I don't mean to like derail her or anything, but like, is there somewhere where we can see like the whole thing? Because that's what I was looking to see.
Oh,
just
no.
like that short clip, but
well, that's because that's an equity thing. No, there's no rec. I mean, I don't even think there's footage of the final produced play. There are the stills. There are these beautiful stills that we have. And I think Steve Bassano did the pictures. I always want to give credit when, so hopefully I've credited everybody who pulled up. But no, there is no video footage of the actual show. And that is an equity thing. That's Gina Hill. She thought she was Spiral from the X-Men, and also was hit a home run. I was happy with all that.
I mean, like, that helmet is like, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's awesome to be able to have been just right there and hands on with doing all of this. That's what I'm saying. Is like, it's definitely all the puppets and everything. Like, it's awesome. Like,
so and this picture is a good example. So at the time we did this show, I don't think all of the actors were equity, but we had several equity actors, including Philip on the far left, John there in the middle, and of course Lacey Goranson, sort of the star of the play, the woman in the red. And so, because I didn't have the budget for like a proper off-broad, like, I forget what actual name of the equity contract is that we used, but I certainly couldn't afford. It was definitely part of the equity deal that we could not film it, which is fine.
I see, because then it would start crossing over into alerting
then
like
making
Warner Brothers and this. It's
correct, and it's a very common thing. I mean, look, there's of all the things that I have strong opinions on concerning entertainment union. Like, I'm actually fairly agnostic concerning this. I mean, now it's a little bit different because we're post COVID and there's so much live streaming, et cetera, et cetera. But for the most part, back then I was fairly agnostic about the fact that we could, because I do believe that I am a firm believer in theater. It didn't help our box office as much as I would have hoped, but I believe theater is meant to be like, I feel like I should have, and I feel like I could have had an archival copy made, which I wish I had done for my own benefit, which I didn't do. But in terms of it being broadcast, I am a firm believer in theater not overindulging and over relying on things like live stream, because I believe theater is meant to be absorbed. Like, I feel like something it's meant to be seen in real time,
right
in the space.
I can appreciate that too, that it gives it more of a it's not one performance, you know what I mean? It's like the whole collection of it, you know what I mean? Like, it's contrasting, like, if it's, because this is the when it was done in like 2016, and then like there was like other ones too, and you had all the all the practice. Like each time is like part of the whole thing in a sense. I don't know how to describe that, but yeah, I get it. Like,
yeah, and the big thing with, I mean, you know, I'm in terms of different things being different experiences. One of the big, other than the idea that theater is very and deliberately very immersive. I mean, unless the experience is ruined because the seats are too cramped or like there are plenty of things that can ruin a theater experience. You got to go to the bathroom and they're not giving you an intermission, which is what I mean. I hate theater pieces where, you know, I forget what I had seen, but I had seen theater pieces in New York before I left where it was like 3+ hours and there was no opportunity to go to the bathroom. And I was just so irritated. But all those things aside, theater as an experience is beyond the idea that it's immersive in a way that you're meant to be in the room with physical bodies. Television and film, built into the mechanism, is this idea that the artists behind the scenes choose your focus. You know, your frame is being presented to you two-dimensionally in a way that you have no control over. Live theater, even though you should be following a clear story, your focus is your own. And I think that you can't that's hard to recreate by if it's good theater. That's hard to recreate by making a, you know, live stream or televised version of it, in my opinion. Some people think differently, but I think it's meant to be absorbed. And I think, you know, I remember the theater is one medium that will never ever die.
Yeah, I can see it because I can see what you're saying. It gives every, I don't know if you call it viewer, whoever's watching it, gives everyone their own like unique experience that isn't their own you know, everyone has their own perspective on everything that's happening, and especially if it's not like we're saying with like being live streamed or recorded or whatever, that makes it all that much more unique for everyone. So it creates like a different kind of just bond with like the story or whatever. I that's what I'm saying. Like I never really think about it. You know, I've been to like theater before. I've been to the movie theaters before too. But you know what I mean? Like I never like think about like the way like things work in actuality. You know what I mean? Like actually, it's funny. I was just watching this video the other day. I watched like all the conspiracy stuff, all of it. And it was this thing about theaters and saying how like all these early theaters, they were all called the ISIS theaters and the orphan theaters, and like where do they come from? And it was like this, I don't know what the you know, it was like, but it was like they were all had the same name, and they all they were like proposing the idea that they were like basically sort of like brainwashing, you know, like not necessarily brainwashing, but you know, like they were because they were tying them to the Masons and stuff. That's what they were saying, that they were initially where they would broadcast movies for them and everything. And I was just like, what? Okay. But so that's, I mean, what I'm saying.
I mean, that sounds interesting. I mean, look, I love talking conspiracy theories. I tried to write a play about a conspiracy theory, but a conspiracy theorist, but it proved too challenging for a variety of ways. I may try one day to tackle that topic again, because we do live in an I'm sorry.
I was gonna say you did. Speaking of conspiracies, like you did have the. Are you talking about the? I'll flip it to the Red Room on a Dark Web. Is that?
Oh,
are you considering that conspiracy or no?
No, that's not. I mean, that's not a conspiracy theory. I mean, so I'll quickly be blunt about my conspiracy theory play. So I had seen ad. Well, that's not. But that I get. So my Red Room on a Dark Web, which is one of my favorite plays. Red Room on a Dark Web is it? It's just it's a play about two, what's somewhat there in the description, but these two teenagers in the Rust Belt it's basically a horror play, and it does involve creepypasta, but I kind of made the creepypasta up myself. There's not really a conspiracy theory element to it. It's more of it's my sort of Rust Belt play. It's my sort of lamentation of the dead Rust Belt, and sort of like the history of the decline and fall of American industry, which I is a big part of a lot of my work. In terms of, and especially how it relates to poverty in the Midwest, which is again a big thing that I write about. But it was really just about these two teenagers who are kind of haunted, and they're kind of kept in the downtown. They're sort of haunted in their downtown part of Columbus, Ohio, and sort of surrounding them are all these dead factories. It's very Lovecraftian, the idea that these factories are actually sort of old dead gods that have some sort of a life to them. And the main character, Desba's father, who's definitely the antagonist, but is a sympathetic character in the piece. He kind of is as his, and it's obviously about masculinity in the sense that he was a guy who worked at a factory with the factory closed, and he kind of didn't know where to put his identity, which is true for a lot of people in the Midwest, a sort of idea of providing for his family and being successful, which he was all those things, but then the factory closed and he didn't kind of know what to do with himself. And that would have been years ago. That would have like mirroring what happened to my own father. So that would have been like in the 90s, post, like right around NAFTA. And of course, then now cut to now, it's obviously it's all torn to hell, and he gets possessed by these old dead factories. And then the play kind of becomes a revenge tale where Desba realizes that her father, to an extent, was I don't want to say victim, but the idea, and it's weirdly something that I think could be very bipartisan, but the idea the idea that there's sort of a group of people in America, you could call them elite, you could call them plutocrats, whatever you want to call it, and they're neither left nor right. They're people who, and they're not necessarily conservative or Democrat, but it's just a class of folk that have just moved their assets from sort of like the America's industry to something like the tech sector, the way that the country works in terms of its economy. And, I'm not, this is going to sound skewing a little bit into politics. I'm very much not a supply. Like I for what little entree I have in talking into conservative worlds, because I'm not a lefty, and I certainly have nothing but contempt for socialism. But I don't think supply side economics is a healthy form of capitalism. I think the idea that what we merit ourselves to in terms of quote unquote supply side economics, like Ben Shapiro loves it, but I think he's wrong. And I think that it's harmed the country, and I think that I think it's visibly, and I think that at some point you have to find both the cost benefit analysis of what is a national strategy for continuing to keep the cohesion of the country together and having strong sectors of commerce versus, just profit for a few people. And I think that that's exhibited by, again, the decline of industry in this country. If you look into it, it was also a time when things like race relations were continually skewing in a positive direction. I just really think, and this is true for a lot of my work, is that the fall of American industry was a real something we really we need to find a way to fix. Not necessarily to bring industry back, but that's one of the things. And so this whole play is my lamentation about that and how it affected these two teenagers in this downtrodden, poor, and I just, right. The idea is eventually that's the conclusion the audience is supposed to make at the end. Like, and not as talk about how a lot of artists made this in a very not preachy way. Like the play, if you're someone, the play is very accessible to someone. It's not like a get richy play, like get richy in terms of but it's not one of those plays where it's like the play is not if you're a millionaire in America, I must think that you made that money through like blood money. It's not that kind of play at all, because I don't believe that. It's not that at all. But it's just trying to analyze a certain dynamic of how upward mobility is structured in the country in a way that I hope is very bipartisan.
Well, I mean, Desba's father's stash of valuable copper is stolen. I mean,
I don't know.
that
I don't know.
represents,
That's a thing. I mean, copper pipe. I mean, look. I've
oh,
had
I
a lot
know.
of it.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
It's a
you got
blessing
a
and a
bunch of it
curse.
sitting around.
Yeah, I mean, the exposure I've had, it's hard. Like, I mean, look, a lot of it's just built on what's been going on with my hometown and my parents and the things that I've seen, both, when I was very young and then, but it breaks my heart. And so I've definitely know people who their lives, like being like someone scrounging for copper to make money, is like a real thing. And it's,
Oh yeah.
it shouldn't
No,
be,
that's what I mean. I don't think that everyone like recognizes that's a person that's here, that's like going around collecting copper and scrap metal and stuff, and that's not like it just started last year. Like,
no,
like those guys have always been here.
Yeah, and then but these two teams, the teens are very creative, and they Kevin is much more of a problem child. Kevin is someone who actually starts making, it's very exploitive in the sense that he was making money from like doing cam shows, and the idea that there are people out there, men out there, who are viewing. I think I eventually aged him exactly as 18, but this idea that it's basic, like not to say I didn't I didn't try to overload themes into this play, but the play was sort of about, like child abuse and exploitation. And, it is a very, a very common thing that's happening right now where young folks will turn to think, I mean, this was before OnlyFans was a real big deal, this play, but like,
Oh yeah.
It's basically like that's how he basically makes his money on OnlyFans, and which I think is obviously heartbreaking. But then like they find their way out of this through this creepypasta, which the creepypasta then comes to life, which is what the play is about. It was that was the play. I mean, I think that's the play that got me into my emerging writers group. Like that play, that play's never had a production at all, but it might actually be unproduced. It might actually not be able to be produced because it's very, not because of its content, but it's very I wrote stage directions like, the factory comes alive. I mean, it's just one of those things where it will never get produced until like I'm a super successful playwright where someone comes along and is like, I'll give this play $1 million. I mean, it's
Right.
just it's too big. It would be too big of a production.
Well, and so that kind of like leads me exactly my other question about it, is because it had on here listed as like a comic, and it had a couple, or a graphic novel. So I want.
It's something I abandoned. I mean, that project kind of got abandoned. I was doing it with a woman I met through the public act. She was a very talented illustrator named Phoebe, and there's really nothing other than the fact that we both got busy, and so when COVID hit, this illustrator and I started doing a graphic novel version of Red Room on the Dark Web, and then frankly it just sort of fell off, and I've never followed up because my own life, I'm just sort of right now, it's been a journey these past couple of years for all of us. So
right,
but it would make it would make a great graphic novel, and I think that graphic novel might be the medium that it deserves to be in. So seeing a little bit of her illustration.
That's what I'm curious about, is like what how you're going towards that, or how you're approaching, like, were you just like giving her like the because I saw, I only had like a couple pages of art, and I was like, it looks like
I was
still
totally
like maybe working on it, or who knows, but
no, she may have actually even have gotten through a first draft outline of the entire first volume of the graphic novel, like 40 or 50 things. She put a lot of work into it, obviously for no pay. So it was just built on this collaboration. So I'm very indebted to this woman. We just, like I said, we just kind of fell out of touch in the post-COVID figuring out what your lives are. And, but no, she did not. It was actually a very useful process for me to learn about how to write comic books. So I did not I rewrote the entire thing as a comic in the way that like people, not the Marvel method, obviously, but like I think I studied how comic books are written. I looked at a couple, I think, of the comics I have. I mean, I know one was from Grant Morrison, but this idea that there was a trend at least where like they started publishing like what the scripts looked like, and so I got to see how so I did entirely rewrite it as a comic in the format of a graphic novel, which was a very useful exercise.
Yeah, see that's I mean, like I was interested because I know exactly what you're talking about. Like the like I've got like Arkham Asylum, and it's got the script in the back of it, and
that's got to be what I was thinking of.
From Hell, From Hell has got it's got the footnotes in the back of it, but then there's the From Hell Companion, where like he has a bunch of the his scripts, and they're they're like pages long for like one panel sometimes. It's just insanity, and but I mean, I guess that's more like him sometimes. Now that I think about it, there's a bunch of issues of like Spawn that I got that are by Alan Moore, right, where he wrote some of those, and it'll have like a couple pages. Yeah,
I had forgotten that he had written a couple. Well, Alan Moore, and we were talking. I don't know how we were talking a little bit about Alan Moore earlier, because I said that I think Alan Moore is sometimes too precious with his work, but I'm a big Alan Moore fan. But I remember that Alan Moore had that phase where, I mean, I don't know if he did, because I know that he wrote a couple issues of Spawn,
right,
and then because a
few
few
he
folks
wrote
did.
the Violator.
So did Neil Gaiman. Oh, did he? Is that what he had? Because he also wrote, like, he had a whole period where he also wrote like a couple of the Rob Liefeld creations. Like he did Glory, and I think he may have did Supreme.
Yeah, he did. I just got.
I have a lot of those
a little while ago. Yeah.
All of which is, I'd be curious to reread them as an adult. Those were 90s comics, and I have them, but I should reread them. But and
I mean, they're hit and miss, like some of the stuff works, some of it doesn't. Like there's like a lot of ideas in them. Like he did, it's actually like, this is almost like a segue. I don't have any of the comics though, but he made, I don't know if you remember Death Blow, but like he made.
I do remember Death Blow. That was a Jim Lee creation, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was. He made this whole like extended story where there's clones of Death Blow, and there's like a girl clone, and that's one of the characters that like Peter Hensel, the guy that he writes a lot of comics for me. That's one of the characters that we wrote fan fiction of, was this girl clone of Death Blow, where she's like an assassin, the same as Death Blow, as Michael Cray or whatever his name. Yeah, Michael Cray. I think that's what it.
I don't remember, but I'm sure that's right. That's fascinating. I do not remember that at all. I believe. I mean, I'd be curious to. I mean, again, Alan Moore. The thing is that Alan Moore's body of work is so fascinating because he has all of his sort of like 80s stuff, which is iconic. And it's great. Like obviously his Swamp Thing run is great, and then The Killing Joke is great, and then of course Watchmen, and even like I have his there's Alan Moore does the DC universe, all of his individual stuff, and then I love his later stuff. We talked a little bit about like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and From Hell and V for Vendetta are all rightfully held up as excellent must read comics. Yeah, but then he dips, like I said, then he starts dipping, like you're writing Glory, and I'm sure you're doing something interesting with Glory, but it's not going to be the first thing I turn to when I'm like, you're reading I want to be careful too, because I doesn't want to make it sound like I'm crapping on Rob Liefeld. I think Rob Liefeld gets too much crap sometimes.
Oh yeah, no, Liefeld he's the man. Like I would.
Yeah, people forget. I mean, I think especially his early stuff is very exciting. There's a reason why he was on those jeans commercials.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's what I always think about that. Like he was, I remember seeing that, and I think that was before X-Force came out, because there was a gap where like New Mutants ended. And then X-Force came out. Like there was a month or two or something. And I remember like getting that first X-Force issue, and it was just like just blowing my mind, because I remember like I didn't get the New Mutants. Like it was by the time I got to the like the newsstand or whatever, it was already all gone. And like that was the time that they were like, oh, get New Mutants. And I was like, really? It was like it was already all gone. So like X-Force 1 was like the first Rob Liefeld that like I saw, and I was just like, that was like what, 91 or 92 or whatever, 91. So like I was like 11 or 12 or whatever. I was just like, oh my, what the yeah,
Sure.
he's Liefeld's definitely I'm definitely against the haters.
Yeah, I'm part of that, you know. I'm definitely team Liefeld, especially you know, look, are there examples where he's maybe phoning it in, or, you know, I don't know, like there's definitely, I definitely get, by that same token, I have gotten a big laugh out of, you know, people doing those sort of I don't know if it was on Tumblr or where I saw it years ago, but like a web page of someone just sort of like taking panels of his artwork that are sort of seem to be sort of disproportionate. So
yeah.
do I get a laugh out of looking at bad Liefeld art? Of course, but you know, not every, you know, that who knows why those are the way they are, but it does not change that when he's putting in the work, it's really exciting. It's really exciting stuff.
Oh yeah, no, he's yeah, that's,
you know, he was, people, it's Spawn and McFarlane, I feel like, became the hit, but all of those Image comic books were a big deal when they came out. You know, Youngblood was, I remember getting, I mean, it was, Jim Lee had Wildcats, McFarlane had Spawn, Liefeld had Youngblood, and then Silvestri had, what was it, Cyberforce?
Yeah. And Cyberforce is still going too. Like,
and is it still with Image?
Yeah, I don't know how they do that. Like, it's like Top Cow Studios, and it's his thing, but maybe they publish it with it. However, they have. I mean, he's like one of the founders. I know I can't. My brain cannot follow. Like, there's the whole argument where like Liefeld got kicked out of Image, and then he went back, and there's all. I can't follow any of that.
There's a lot of behind the scenes, all of those comics, especially that. Yeah, there's a lot of. Typically, there was a lot of behind the scenes drama in those years, but you know, I always get a kick out of, especially. I mean, the thing that I find it, like, Jim Lee's characters are a really interesting example, because I think his are the only characters that have made. Like, I think Wildcats are the only characters, or maybe some of the few, who have made like non-special edition crossover in canon appearances in like for all of the main, because he just took Wild to the whatever that imprint was, because I remember they popped up in canon in Marvel's Reborn series, because Jim Lee was one of the ones doing that. So I definitely remember like some of the Wildcats popping up there after they'd been at Image, and then of course now they're all just part of DC.
Right. That's. Oh,
I'm for it. I mean, I'm for art writers I'm an advocate of, you know, people keeping control of their characters. So it's not a complaint, but it's just an interesting observation.
Yeah, no, because there was, and it's funny because like I think about too, like that was like the first big thing too with Image. You know, they came out, everybody saw their books, and then they did that Deathmate story, right? It was like Image and Valiant, and they combined all the heroes into like, you know, like weird combined versions that were all in this other universe or whatever. And so like I guess and then like you're saying, you know, there's the whole thing with them crossing over with Marvel, and then Marvel bought that other Malibu company that came like, so they're like
and they carried over virtually none. I mean, the thing that's really tragic about that, I was just thinking about, you know, Malibu, because I actually am if you keep seeing me do this, it's because I don't have AC at my place as I'm redoing my place. So I live in North Carolina and my house is still quite a fixer-upper. But I just got done with building basically my comic book reading room because I need a whole room for it, of course. And I have a box. I was looking at my Valiant comics because I'm a big Valiant person, but I also saw my Malibu / Ultraverse comics. And Marvel, I remember this vividly. Marvel bought them because they had a proprietary coloring. It was either an inking or a coloring process that was like proprietary, and that's why Marvel bought them out in the 90s, or maybe I think it's still the 90s. Yeah, and I think there was a brief, maybe a very, very brief moment where I felt like they tried to do something with like I remember Prime was a big Ultraverse character. I feel like Prime was in one Marvel thing. I'd be really curious to know. I would one day I got to go down a rabbit hole to see if any of the Ultraverse comic book characters carried over. I guess maybe I thought I saw one of them, and maybe Blink is one. I feel like there was when there was a run of a book called Exiles that Marvel did in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I feel like maybe that's how they laundered some of the Ultraverse characters into the Marvel mainstream, but I totally can't remember.
Yeah, that's what I can't think of any. Maybe that Nightman somehow. I think like he might have been, but even then, I think because they had a show with him too. I think.
Oh yeah, Nightman had it. Yeah, that's right. Nightman. But yeah, I don't know. I don't hear enough Nightman. I mean, if there's any iteration of that character in Marvel, as far as I know, it's like all the Ultraverse characters are just gone.
That's weird. Like let's I do remember hearing that though, that it was to buy because they had it was like a coloring technology or whatever they knew, or they had all the good people that knew how to do the coloring program they were using or whatever it was, and they were like, that was the big deal.
Yeah. And that was back when, there was so much, that was another crazy thing about the comic books industry back then is, that was all before. I mean, Warner Brothers, I know Warner Brothers did own DC in the 90s. So there was money to play around then, but Marvel didn't have a lot of house money because that's why they were licensing out so many of their proprities to studios.
Right, they hit initial.
That didn't, and that didn't, and that's why you had so many different places, 20th Century Fox. That's why, the first round of comic book movies were all from different studios.
Right, because they were just like anybody, like, okay, yeah, just sure, okay, Fantastic Four, but maybe not the rest. We'll sell the rest to someone else, or like we'll sell. That probably had to be what they were thinking, was that they were gonna like piecemeal it out all to.
I mean, this thing was money.
They were just going after.
They were just going after the top bidder, whoever would be the top bidder in each instance. That was all under Avi. I mean, that was all Avi Arad.
Huh.
That I remember. Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah. So yeah, I mean, I could talk. I mean, that comics. I mean, Red Room on a Dark. I mean, all all of my work. I mean, I don't know. When you were scrolling through, I mean, some of my work doesn't have. Like Appalachian Pachinko is like the two plays earlier up, Lime-A-Rita Racist and my Guggenheim play. They don't have really anything fantastical about them. They're both pretty much straight plays, but still deal with the issues I talked, like the issues of sort of class and sort of working class. I mean, it's all they're all rooted in sort of my own identity, but. As a playwright, but they don't quite have the fantastical element, even though that's a big strand of the kind of writing that I do. Even though I do straight plays, a lot of my work tends to be very fantastical. Lime-A-Rita Racist was but I do love. I mean, Lime-A-Rita Racist. I had a play reading of that. I'm trying to. So 2023 sort of marks my return to the theater world. I got to change that. I will say this. I'm reading that. I got to change that. I don't think that description is right, to be quite honest. I think it was actually given to me. I don't think the play is about whether it's right or wrong to punch a Nazi. but I think the play is
Well,
more about whether it's right or wrong to punch someone. It's more of a question. First of all, it's more of a question. It's a play about, the premise of that play is about anger being like a drug, and like any drug, if you indulge the anger too much, you can overdose. It can mess you up. But there is a situation in the play, not dissimilar from, we see a lot of it now. It was based on a real incident that happened to me, but sort of like a Daniel Penny situation where the play was about a guy
right,
who's just
right.
trying to go to work, who stops. It seems like basically a guy in a Dwayne Reed who's harassing a bunch of other people. The protagonist of Lime-A-Rita Racist stops that person, and then he's a working class guy, and this is also to play it's a play about race and class in a way that he's a white character, his coworker and best friend is a black character. Their boss is sort of
the black character was the Nazi or the white character?
No. I'm just giving you the background. The Nazis.
There's black Nazis
what happened?
too. Like,
there are black. No. The two main characters in terms of the heroes of the protagonists are the white guy.
oh, that's him and his coworker.
Yeah, and then he has a black coworker and they're friends, but they eventually get torn apart because what happens is he stops a guy at a Dwayne Reed who's harassing a bunch of people, sort of puts him in the hospital. You find out later that same guy had just gone on a racist rant in the subway. And so the guy who stopped him sort of wrestles with, like, do I take credit for ending this guy? Do I tell the world that I'm the one who stopped this monster who went on a racist rant on the subway? Do I keep it to myself? And as he wrestles with this with his coworker, who's his friend, they sort of get torn apart by they have a new boss at their job who is sort of like, I don't know. I don't want to, with the time we have, be too, throwing grenades into the world. But she's sort of like a far left activist, and she's and she's a white woman from like a affluent background, but sort of like is just and so she, in her sort of application of that ideology, what she in effect does from her, basically in a position of power over these two characters, manages to basically ruin their lives and destroy their friendship, all built around like how how they all handled this incident. So it's a much more of an exploration about like how people deal with, and so for each one of these three characters, the play is about how they manifest their anger. And so for him, for sort of like one of the main protagonists, the guy who stops you could call him a Nazi. I think that's the thing, is that I've grown to become a little bit more. I think the term Nazi now should just be reserved for Nazis. I think the reason why that's no longer is, it was given. It was given to me by someone I trust and like. But I also think that I think at the time I was a little bit more loosey-goosey with, in a way that I regret, in a way that, because I am actually now one of my big things is a defender of, I believe in the defense of language and language having meaning and not having fixed definitions. And so I think the number one reason why I got to change is because even though the character went on a racist rant, he's not, I think a Nazi should be reserved for someone who actually espouses specifically Nazi or neo-Nazi ideology.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is, I mean, you could take it into a kind of like an absurd level too, and have it, just using like stage directions that it's, a Nazi that went on this rant that the main character beats up, like have it actually be like a Nazi cosplayer or something, like it's funny because there's
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I'm like half crazy trying to remember what I'm talking about here, but there's like a reenactment, that's what it is, in my town, where they do the D-Day thing. So they have these tons of people that all come in town that all it is really cool, you know what I'm saying? They got like tanks and all the shit, like planes, boats, all of it. They run around, but it's like there's there's the people that are like all like the French and like the Americans, and then there's like the guys, the Germans, and it's like they all camp there, but it's sort of, but like the German ones all have like.
That is actually, I mean, I mean, like that's a different play, which you should actually write something about that. That's actually a really funny and genuinely interesting premise. The idea of someone getting like someone going to a reenactment and later getting assaulted. In Lime-A-Rita Racist, it's much more that's why it's much more like I said, it's much more an exploration of like for that character whose name is Dan. It's much more like a Daniel Penny situation where Dan is a guy who has been in physical conflicts that had wrestled and stepped into a situation where he thought he could was ending a threat.
Right.
And I know where, I mean, I know where it's, I'm asking, even though, and I believe this is a quality that good writers should do, even though I think I know what the threshold should be for like physical violence or physical, I'm trying more to ask the question so that the audience can, in a way that, because we live in an age where everybody is a little too certain about a little too many things. Like I'm like, people should slow their roll with certainty. Like, someone who's just someone who's just wearing a MAGA hat should not be punched in the face. You know what I mean? Like that's that's not the correct response. And so, I mean, at all, like I'm using that example. I mean, like, I mean, I'm just using that as a, one example. And so, but I don't have the answer for, more, but the person who, I guess where I was going with that is the person who's like, MAGA hat wearers are Nazis and we got to punch them in the face. I'm like, you're way too certain about what you think a Nazi and fascism is, and you're wrong. Like the other thing too is that then those same people, you tend to ask them, can you define fascism? Do you know anything about Mussolini? Most people don't even know what words mean. So a lot of my work is meant to be trying to get people to have some introspection about the shit that they're, pardon my French, but the stuff that they're certain about. And at least before they get there, maybe ask themselves if they're as right as they think they are. Myself included. I mean, that's why I write the question.
Right.
I write the question and not the answer. I can't stand art. I put art in quotes because I don't think it's very artistic, but let's call it content. Content that like tells me how I should think or feel, I have no interest in.
Right. It's not, I know what you're, I know where I had something I was going with that, where I was thinking, I was like, right, there's definitely, just with having art that just only, that is just, certain, right? That is not, and I guess that's, to bring it kind of back to theater, what it makes me think of is that I think that's really interesting that it could change, right? That it can sort of grow from like production to production, and it's really a reflection of like the way that people grow. You know what I mean? Because this is, if you imagine to try and explain everything that the world has happened in the last 10 years to someone in 1990 or in the year 2000, right? When 2000 was coming here and everyone was certain, like there was something was going to happen, Y2K or,
Right. Oh, like, I remember.
No, this is what it's going to be. Be like, what? Like, it would just be like, just so like unbelievable, and God, I'm not quite just the way, well, I guess my other point with it is just how that the culture like redefines words and language. Like that's like you're saying that people don't, like they use calling people Nazis or fascists, and it's language has been redefined there, right?
Right. And what interests me about that conversation as someone who's a playwright and a writer, and you see this a lot, right? Is so that when someone changes the definition of like, so the vernacular evolves over time. That's a thing that exists. So words can take on new meaning, and words can change sort of organically. But the problem we face culturally right now is twofold, which is that what is not as historically, what is different now? What is different with language now is twofold. One, it is not organic when someone uses a word and just doesn't have the definition. I just saw a statistic where the generation below us is like the first generation, in American history where the IQs are going down. And I think that's because when everything is information on demand, and like when we're in a conversation, like I'm actually proud in this conversation, I've never Googled anything. Like I'm just relying on my own memory. And so when you don't have that, but I'm 42, I have had the muscle of like trying to create the discipline of reading enough, primary sources and resources in my time that I don't need, and I feel like that's a discipline lost on a lot of folks. And the result of it is like what I said before, where, you can have someone go to a protest of, I don't know, Moms for Liberty, whether you agree with Moms for Liberty or not, they're not fascists. You know what I mean? It's like whether you agree with what
they
they're
could
doing,
be
like,
though. They could be.
But I mean, if it require, I mean, for them to be fascists, it require. I mean, even if you want to make the argument that you could say that if the arguments that they're bigoted, or the arguments that they're doing, like all of the arguments, we'd have to define fascism first. And if fascism is a political movement built on the combination of authoritarian strength united usually around one ideological person, which is, from what I remember, and again, this is off the top of my head, sort of like the textbook definition of like fascism is authoritarianism plus one other quality, the quality that sort of absorbs the figurehead. Fascism is typically similar,
like authoritarianism or something. Authoritarianism,
I mentioned
state like taking control of the market and that's not super. I'm not super, you're doing better at the definition than me, definitely. And I've got like a 3-second like gap or something. It feels like every time I say something, it's like 3 seconds. I can see like I don't know what that is, but
well, all I was saying was that I was going through the definition of fascism just to say that if you wanted to define something, because I don't think it should be. I think it's fascism is especially used. It's one of those words you hear all the time, and I'm like, fascism should mean something very specific, and it's just that's not them. You know what I mean? Like neo-Nazis are fascists because neo-Nazis believe in what Nazism, and Nazism is again an authoritarian. It's the idea of using authoritarianism, which is, like you said, authoritarianism is a whenever you use a structure of power, but especially a governmental structure of power to control the body politic. That's authority. Like the authority doesn't necessarily mean an authoritarian figure. It means the authority writ large. Authoritarianism is like someone. That's why it's typically been something America's been pretty good at pushing back on. And then you have because I think, if I'm not mistaken, the actual term fascism was coined by Mussolini in Italy. It actually originated there, even though it applied later to Germany, that at its origin point. And I think Mussolini may have even invented the word, because he was that type of authoritarian figure. So that's why when I push back on people saying that's authority, I mean, I do it for people who are, in some sort of, if someone from an alt-right world is going to say to me, this is like, I'm trying to think of an example that you might hear of a group that like I don't know,
the Proud Boys.
But I mean, I feel like Proud Boys are. I'm trying to think of it. Like, I feel like I'll give you an example. The idea that
ones that they're against, or you're saying an example.
I was trying to find, because I used Moms for Liberty because that's a group that, like, I feel someone from a very left-leaning ideology would be quick to say they're fascists, and I would say, yeah, maybe that's too strong. And I'm trying to think of it. I was trying to think of a comparative in
on the left-wing side.
Or the right, for someone who's from the right wing that would say this is fascism. I mean, I think that I mean, the biggest example that they might, like someone like Trudeau. Is Trudeau a fact? Like, is he a fascist? Like, I mean, are we there? I mean, that's actually. I mean, I don't. He might be a fan. I kind of had to slow my roll there. I'm like, he does actually do some fascistic shit.
It does kind
but,
of. Concerning.
But yeah, I mean, there's still the big difference where. Let me put it this way. It's the muscle that I'm. I mean, there are people right now that say that I would be willing to get into a conversation if they like. If I would not, for the sake of preservation of social comity, I would reserve myself from describing Trudeau as a fascist, even if I think that I find what Trudeau is doing far more threatening to the social cohesion of North America than Moms for Liberty. But I would engage with someone who has a different point of view with me in a way where, I would slow my roll with. I mean, I would point to. I would say, I'd say he's a figurehead who's using authoritarian governmental control to like. I think these symptoms fit the definition far more than, a group who's just doing things you disagree with. But I think I would try to engage in the conversation in good faith. That's the phrase I was looking for. I would try to have that conversation in good faith.
Right. I think, like, I definitely, to me, it's kind of like, if I'm offended because you said this, you're for the Moms for Liberty, or because you're for against them, or what, whatever it is, and I'm like highly, oh my gosh, I'm just wounded, and you've called me a who knows whatever the insult is, right? It's like, do I want to, if I just come back doing trying to repeat the same thing, it doesn't fix anything, it doesn't. Or can look at it too of like, with different terms and phrases being redefined, for someone to call you a Nazi is like, what? I'm not like against this,
right.
You know what I mean? And it's like,
that's all the point. That's the point. Is the idea that people use these terms, even if you disagree with someone, or you want to make them out to be, if you feel like you have a valid point, people should try to find the words to describe it in a way that is much more accurate versus just lumping it into this sort of like, I know this term means something bad.
Right.
And so that's the problem, is that, yeah, people use terms like authoritarianism and fascism without really knowing what they are. Listen, people on the right use the terms communism and socialism and have no fucking clue what these terms. They don't know the distinguishing characteristics between Marxism and socialism and communism. They've never read any of, they've not read Das Kapital. They have no idea what they're talking about. So it's something that is, it's ubiquitous, in that a lot of people just hear buzzwords because they just listen to podcasts and have never read a single book that emerged from the 20th century. It's heartbreaking. And the other thing that's just as problematic about people not trying to give the discipline to honor as to what words mean is when it's the change via fiat, which is also problematic. So again, language does change organically over time. Change happens very naturally over time. But I find what I get worried about is when words change because people don't know what they mean, or words change because someone says this now means something different.
Right.
I mean, look,
right.
It's happening. It happens. I mean, regardless of, I'm very simple. I mean, it happens a lot in the world concerning issues of gender and sex. It happens a lot in the world concerning issues of race. But it also happens in the world of things like recession. You found last year that there was an attempt, and I was very sympathetic. I've been very sympathetic to a lot of the positions where we are economically, but recession means something very specific. It means, 2 quarters of recessive growth. And if that's, if that's what it is, that's what it is. You can't suddenly redefine that word.
But I think this is what I'm saying. Like I look at a lot of things as stemming from this kind of redefinition of language. Like, I'm gonna have to find, there's this book I have that's the extraordinary origins of all these different things, right? And and one of the things it has is like swear words, right? So all the shit, fuck, piss, all those, right, are all come from this Saxons, right? The initial people that were in like the Irish Isles, English Isles, Scotland, Wales, all the people that were there, right? Until the Norman kings came and like conquered it, right? When they did,
Which would have been in what? That was like what? And that was 1066, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like 1,000 years ago. The French came and overthrew them, and were like, "You're like, they were automatically like the lower class people." I mean, you watch Braveheart and all those, like that was, they came and installed themselves as the kings or leaders or dukes or whatever, right? And part of it was stigmatizing their language and their culture. So that's what I'm saying. Like now it's excrement and urinate and fornication. Like those other words, those are dirty. Those are the bad words only bad people use. And it's I have a lot of practice discussing that for some reason.
Well, everybody loves.
I think about it a lot.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, look, that's why, especially when I think in the past couple of years, I've really wrestled with, I don't know. I mean, who knows how many folks could be watching at the moment who have been exposed to my work, but I have definitely wrestled in the past couple of years with trying to find the language to make sure that I have the courage to articulate myself politically as an artist. And I think because I feel like a lot of artists don't do it, and a lot of artists just indulge sort of the activist position or something like, and I feel like it's been my responsibility to create the discipline to sort of not do what the main thrust of the main wave is doing. And I'm just kind of getting there now, which is why I'm sort of happy to try to start reemerging. This has been, this interview is a great example. I have a production next month, which will be great, of a new play called Towering Blue Inferno.
Is that something I can look up on the thing here?
Oh yeah, pop it up. I think, yeah, no, you can totally look it up. I can actually send you the link.
Because that's what I'm saying. It's definitely like,
yeah, because people who are in LA should go see it. Hold on, I'm sending you the link right now.
Oh, we're on the Twitter thing?
That's the theater company. Seditious Apostate is the theater company. I sent it to you.
Jesus. Uh-oh. I found... I won't just play, because I found like one thing over here, but it won't.
No, in the private chat, I just sent you in our chat. I sent it to you.
Oh, on there.
In the chat. In our little window here.
Oh, okay. I'm on a completely different page. I see.
I can put it in the comments too. I'll just put it there.
Oh yeah, no, that would definitely. There we go.
Oh yeah, there you got it. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
That'll be next month. When we leave, when this is done, I actually go to I'm going to a digital rehearsal for rehearsals for that. So I'm very excited.
Okay. And this is in North Carolina, is where you're saying.
No. This production's in LA. I'm in North Carolina. The production will be in LA.
Okay. See, that's what I'm saying. I'm also like, I have no idea about anything with theater or nothing, obviously. Yeah. So I'm not. Okay. No. Okay. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Talented director, talented actors. So it's definitely very exciting. But yeah, like I said, that's why this was such a fantastic. It's been it's a fantastic opportunity to talk because, other than I like your style and it seems like we have a lot of the same ideas. I've sort of been in incubation the past couple years. Just I've not, I've certainly not been writing as many plays as I should have, but I've just been in incubation because obviously the world has gone through a lot, and I've just been calculated in terms of articulating my place in that upheaval. But I think that I feel pretty good about trying to dip my toe back into the creative world, which is my first sort of where my strengths lie.
Right.
But part of that includes not giving an inch in terms of when I have conversations with people, making sure words and definitions matter and that we agree on them. Because also the other thing too is if I have a conversation with someone who won't concede that we have the same definition on something, it's better to know it early in the conversation rather than later.
Right. Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's definitely, I find it just interesting. That's what I was saying. Like, I honestly was like, I just wanted to like talk to you because I found like the concept of this whole your plays. I was like, it's just crazy. Like a play about, like a therapy group of PTSD people that all think they're superheroes, and like just how, it's not like a clear like it's like exploring that like the same thing with the punch in the Nazi, or it's not a Nazi one, like that it's exploring this just that middle ground, right? And it's I don't know, there's something about like, because it's like a play and you're like controlling so much of what can be seen or what can even be taken, even like if you can see all the different aspects of a production, you're still going to be limited to just those. So you're controlling all that and putting it out as just like this, like you said, like it's like putting the viewers out there, like questioning themselves, like what, how they would react to these different things. How would I don't know. So I'm saying it gives me a different perception of theater. Definitely. That's what I mean. Like I've been to different plays. I wrote a one act play for like my local theater. Had a call. They said they wanted to do one act plays. So I was like, I'll try writing a play, and they picked it.
That's great.
That's what I'm saying. I was like, oh, okay. And it, I watched it and I was like, this is really cool. Like it was, it's like this story. There's a mom and a daughter and a son, and the son's in another room, and like they're talking to each other, and like that's part of the play, is that like he's in the other room, like he doesn't come out until like the end. And I was just like, like watching it, but I didn't have like anything to do with them like producing it or any of that. You know what I mean? Like I just sent them the thing that I wrote, and I was just like, it blew me away that they picked it and then that they put it on. But then like them putting it on, I was just like, oh, that's exactly what I thought. That's why.
Hey man,
wow.
Listen, you should if you enjoyed it, you should look. There's plenty of websites for competitions and stuff. If you enjoyed it, you should stick with it. I mean, look, I'm a big advocate for playwriting. So if you had a good experience, you should look to it as consider doing it again.
Right. No, definitely. I like it. Well, what else did I have?
Is this a good? Are we nearing it? Are we nearing or wrapping up? Is that?
Yeah, if you want, like because we've been going for like almost a couple hours here, so we can definitely go ahead and like cut it out here, and especially like ending with you doing the.
That was not necessarily my. I'm actually. I could talk to you for a lot. That was not necessarily my. You said something that whatever you said prompted that question. That was not necessarily that I want to leave. I'm having a great time chatting. So please do not think of me as rude. That was that. Whatever you said, something you said was like
highly offended, sir.
Because
that's cool. We can
this has been a fantastic. This has been fantastic talking.
Oh, I like this. Like, yeah, because one thing is my phone is getting at like, it is getting down. So I do have to like, I can't like, I've only got like the one pair of headphones and
No, I mean, regardless of how we got here, we should. This is great. This is if for anyone who's still watching, they've been with us for nearly 2 hours. This has been great.
well, and I noticed with a lot of my streams that people play them like later is that's how most of them have been. Like a couple people will watch while we're live, and then it stays up, and I clip parts out and this and that, and just it stays up there. So I mean that is the thing too, is that I think it's like it's been like I said, I was fascinated by your works, by the plays, and like seeing like, because that was let me see if I can go back to the that other the images. What is that? I don't think this is it. Fuck. But that you had that said you wanted to use your work as like sort of like the Blade Runner test, right? Where
the Voight-Kampff, for empathy.
Yes,
yeah, which is very true.
That's what I'm saying. Like I find it really like interesting that that's what's in your work. You know what I mean? Like you've got just this heart in it. You're just like
I'm
exploring.
I'm desperate. I would hate myself if, similar to, I mean, look, I maybe I'll be the last person striving for this, but I want my work to be accessible, and I strive, no matter how deep, unless it's something that I believe is a inexorable sort of moral conviction, something like, I try to, in terms of like social matters and stuff like that, I want the audience to ask questions versus, I just want to explore it with folks. And have them come to conclusions. I definitely I would feel something about you said about putting my heart into it. I would feel like a failure if I did something that was not that.
Right. Yeah. That's what I mean, is like, it's definitely, like that, reading through all of it, the same with the Red Room one, like, they're like confronting this, like how to deal with that, with the, are they gonna follow through with doing, like the videos, is that really what they're gonna, is there a way to stick with that, or is there a way to do, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
Just that you're confronting like all these, like these awkward questions and like just tough areas, you know what I mean? Things where there aren't clear answers. And like, I always find that fascinating. Like, the same with this, with Bob, the whole other reason we're here is, is he a good person? Is he a bad person? Like, in Bob's world, he's definitely like, he's a good person. You know what I mean? Like, he's there
Absolutely.
for Jack. He's
yep. We got, I mean, hopefully we will be in touch. We will stay in touch.
Yeah. No, we definitely got to do this again. Like, I'd like to, so I've wanted to like go over different, just different ideas and things. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'll play like a little exit thing here, and then like stick around for a minute, and then we'll talk.
Sure.
And so go check out. Does that show what the website is? Well, I put all the stuff down in the links and the comments and everything. So
that's enough. That's more than enough for people to figure out where they got to go.
I'm gonna play like all the. I'll do. Where's the one that's a? Okay, well, I'll play this one.
He stole my balloons! didn't somebody tell me that he had one of those things?
Bob? Gun. Going to need a minute or two alone, boys.
God damn